three teams that are candidates to reach their first college football playoff. The candidates are USC, Penn State, and Tennessee. The biggest reason for optimism, according to Heather, is part of what was just mentioned. Offensive identity. Writing, it's Heupel's high-flying offense, and that isn't changing, even if the personnel has. No question the Vols lose some big-time names, offensive coordinator Alex Golish, quarterback Hendon Hooker, receiver Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt, but there is plenty of talent lurking in the shadows. Tennessee is expecting Oregon transfer Dante Thornton to emerge as a reliable playmaker, and the staff is confident in quarterback Joe Milton. The Vols offense should again be one of the nation's fastest, most productive, and entertaining, is what she writes. The biggest hurdle, Heather writes, is defensive growth. Tennessee's defense showed improvement as the season progressed, but in order to beat Georgia and avoid an upset like South Carolina, it has to be better. And she goes through some of the numbers of last season. I don't have anything to disagree with there. Now, we can talk about trying to get to the playoff, because that is a challenge when Georgia's in your division and Alabama's on your schedule, and you play in the SEC, which has a bunch of quality opponents at the very least. But what do you think there with part of what I just read and the idea that Tennessee is one of the top candidates to make its first college football playoff?
Well, I think Tennessee should be in this list, in this group. There is offensive identity. You saw what happened in the bowl game, and usually there's a lot of optimism going into the new season when a team handles business in the bowl game. This is where you see preseason rankings that are sometimes outrageous and totally wrong because the team did a really good job in the bowl game and they got some players returning, and so you just automatically think, oh, they're going to be great the next year. And more times than not, they are pretty good. So I think it's a combination of what Tennessee did in the bowl game. It is a combination of the offensive philosophy and the success that Josh Heupel has had in his 2 years here. His first season did it with the same personnel that the previous coach had and couldn't move the ball a lick, couldn't do anything offensively. So that speaks to how potent this offensive system really, really is. And then we clearly saw how it was basically unstoppable for a majority of the season. You take a Joe Milton, who is experienced, who has all the physical tools. You have a group of receivers that are coming back outside of Jalen Hyatt and Tillman. Didn't really have Tillman last year anyways. You got to replace Darnell Wright, though. That's the only thing that gives me cause to pause. Like, hold on now. Who's going to block like Darnell Wright? Because Darnell Wright provided that protection versus Alabama. If you want to beat Alabama, you want to have a chance to compete against Georgia, you better have someone protecting the edge.
If Darnell Wright didn't play in that game, it's difficult to believe that Tennessee would have won.
Correct. So, of course, there's questions. There were questions last year about the entire offensive line, and the entire offensive line was dang good. So these are the questions now. We'll see if those are answered when the season starts. But yeah, Tennessee should be right there with USC and Penn State. Tennessee obviously has the harder road because you have to beat – if you really want to control your own destiny to get to Atlanta, you got to beat Georgia. If not, then you can't lose to teams like South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Or if you do lose to Georgia, you better beat Alabama for sure and hope that it plays out to where other teams lose and you can slip your way in. But ideally, you want to control your own destiny.
It also appears that Josh Heupel has entered the national benefit of the doubt offensive conversation. He was already well respected for what he was doing, but now that he's done what he has at Tennessee, it appears he's entering that conversation that has existed for other established offensive coaches. Think about Lincoln Riley, what he was doing at Oklahoma, then he goes to USC. There's a benefit of the doubt that no matter who's at quarterback, that guy's going to put up big numbers, be a Heisman candidate. And at this point, he's produced Heisman winners at different schools. And Josh Heupel's not necessarily done that in terms of Heisman winners, but Hendon was a top-level candidate. Mm-hmm. Joe Milton, despite not much on-field success to this point, showed flashes late in the season. I think that's helping. Yep. But he is getting some outside top contender conversation next season. Part of that is Joe's ability. People recognize what his skill set is, but a lot of that is Josh Heupel's offense. That's why Heather, I think, wrote what she did, that, yeah, they have to replace very important parts, and that's true, but Josh Heupel's probably going to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he's proven that he has figured it out. Mm-hmm. So anytime you have questions about, okay, can Heupel fix this position, that position, well, he's proven in 2 years that he deserves the benefit of the doubt until he doesn't. So even with Darnell Wright leaving, I feel pretty confident that we'll address that position. I don't believe we'll have the same production at that position. I mean, Darnell Wright didn't give up a sack. Mm-hmm. I'm not expecting that. He's a first-round talent. But I am expecting us to not allow that one position to basically derail the entire season like we've seen happen in the past, where you just couldn't fix one position and you just didn't have success because of that one position, didn't have an answer. You tried multiple guys, it just did not work out. I don't think that's going to be the case. What's weird, though, is clicking on Twitter and seeing Pro Football Focus College name the top 10 offensive coordinators heading into the 2023 season, and there's not a Power T on the list in the top 10. And I get why, right? Because Josh Heupel's the offensive coordinator, so to speak.
But if Golish had stayed instead of taking a head coaching job, don't you think he would have been on the list? He was a Biletnikoff finalist.
Oh, 1,000%.
A Broyles Award finalist.
1,000%. So, like, he leaves. You have Joey Halsley, who's now the offense coordinator. Mm-hmm. Heupel's still going to call plays. But it's still weird to look at a list of top offensive coordinators.
Yeah.
Considering Tennessee was the number one offense in the country last year and not seeing a Power T. You understand why, but it's still weird to see.